Hello, welcome back to Red
We're
Hot
back.
Talk. We are back. We are back indeed. And you are off next week.
Well, actually, I got my dates wrong.
Aha. Right.
Because my wife, I'm going to blame her. She's not here. She always says this week when I would say next week.
Okay.
So
it's a little bit
I'm
of miscommunication there.
I'm here next week as well, but it's the week after I'm not here.
Right. Okay, got you. But anyway, we are back, and we're going to have a little bit of a, hopefully, fun discussions about cameras in general. More specifically about the new releases compared to what we have been seeing over the past few years. I would say that, I don't know whether any of you actually saw the title. We say there is refinement versus innovation. Revolutions. So, I mean, people will talk about like evolutions and revolutions, and we have been getting a lot of cameras that are more as an evolutions over revolutions. So nothing really stands out in terms of features or even just general technologies is no longer something that kind of scream, oh, well, that's new, or that's something they haven't seen before. Everything we see in new cameras nowadays is that, oh, I mean, yeah, we've seen this feature, it's just better. So everything is just better. So that better is more like a evolution. Is it evolution, or maybe we could just say refinement? Because I think refinement is more like grouping terminologies that makes you photographers' life a little bit easier, a little bit better.
It does what it does better.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you know, we talked a little bit about it. I mean, we had a little bit of messaging going on earlier. So you say like these sort of refinements now. Are we actually talking about that we are reaching the peak of digital camera designs or general just research and developments?
Yeah, we've done that. It's all behind us now. every big, well, I don't know, I don't want to sound too down about it, but I do think most of the major innovations have happened.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the refinements we're getting now, they're worth having, but I don't know if it's just me, but do you have a look at some improvements, say from a firmware update or a new version of a camera, and you think, well, why didn't they do that in the first place? Why have I got to buy a new camera? So there's that.
Yeah.
But we don't seem to see any massive leaps forward anymore, do we?
Yeah. I think you're right there. However, I have to say though, that represents majority of the known camera brands. The reason I bring that up is just give an example. You know, like most of the cameras are obviously most camera brands are from Japan. You know, like the popular ones, the Sony, Fujifilm, OM Systems, you know, Canon. They're all Japanese companies. I mean, if the Western companies are more or less just like Leica, you know. There are a few other smaller companies like Pixies, and all the others. Those France. There are some companies out there in the West, but majority, I would say, of them are from Japan. But of course, as we know for the past few years now, for those who may or may not be aware, that there are some Chinese company coming up, and those who may not actually think they are camera companies, in fact, they are making cameras. For instance, DJI. Insta360s. These are Chinese company making cameras, even though they are not the cameras you normally associate with as a photographer. And but don't forget that DJI also owns Hasselblad.
I think that's interesting. I think though that Insta360 and DJI are perhaps not very interested in photography.
No.
DJI has an interest in terms of the Hasselblad brand. But in general, these companies are more interested in video and video content and video content creators. But I think, I don't want to preempt what you're going to say, but I would say that this is an area which is developing where mainstream cameras are not. But I think perhaps the major development with these companies over the last couple of years has been 1-inch sensors.
Yep.
And I think we're all going, whoa, that is big. That is big.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure there's anywhere to go from there.
I think I think so. And but do you think it's because these like mainstream camera makers are becoming a little bit too comfortable because they, you know, like they kind of, well, I mean, we have a company, we have our market share in the industry. We are more or less there, you know. Yes, we are competing against each other, but you know, we are what we are. You know, when it comes to cameras, people know that it's only going to be us, you know. And but do you think, you know, like they may be a little bit lazy in that way? You know, we've seen things repeated in history before. You know, people getting too comfortable in the position.
I think you make a good point. I also think though that larger sensors are a handicap in this type of technologically emerging market.
Yeah.
Because you can do things with a 1-inch sensor you can't do with the bigger one.
Yeah.
You can stabilize it better, you can fit it in smaller devices, you can manage heat better, you can produce more compact form factors. So in a way, there are traditional makers in their eagerness to get everyone going from APS-C to full frame.
Yeah.
You kind of full frame sensors bring their own kind of limitations as to what you can do with them.
Yeah.
They bring quality, but are we kind of living in a post-quality world? I don't know.
I mean, I and also another thing to you know, join the discussions on the ASD. You know, we always talk about hardware jump, you know, like in terms of evolutions and things like that. But also at the same time, I think especially from the big four, you know, in the camera world, Sony, Canon, you know, OM System, Fuji, whatever, you know, Panasonic, I think what all of these companies lacks now are the software developments. You know, they keep pushing the hardware and hardware and hardware all the time, but the likes of, let's say, DJI and Insta, a lot of these are more software based. You know, they trying to max out whatever they can get from smaller sensor instead of trying to go bigger and bigger every single time.
Yeah, I think so. But I also think that they've done remarkable things getting these 1-inch sensors, and they're quite good 1-inch sensors, into these small devices. And when you see what smartphones can do with small 12, 48, or 64 megapixel, allegedly, sensors, that's pretty remarkable. But I'm quite sure that DJI and Insta360 can get remarkable quality, and they already are, from 1-inch sensors. If our camera makers could get that same performance from 1-inch sensor, then we might start to see some new things again. But I think the big four camera makers have been so successful at getting everyone in love with big sensors.
Yeah,
they can't really go backwards again. And I do like big sensors. I really do, for photography. But they do bring certain limitations, I think. They're not great for video, to be honest. You get a lovely cinematic look, but they're hard to work with, and they do limit things like frame rates and heat dissipation and all the rest.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, I mean, obviously, I don't know what everybody thinks about this topic here. And for those who've been buying new cameras for the past couple of years, do you feel like you've been left out for, let's say, this year's release, or vice versa? When you buy the cameras, do you think that you have a massive upgrade over the one that you just replaced, or the one that you just sold off? I think, from my perspective, you know, and Rod probably the same things. Where we test a lot of new cameras and different cameras over time. And I mean, I could confidently say that, you know, a lot of these cameras, every time we get new cameras, I don't find it particularly better over the one I just tested or the one that was released 2 years ago. Yes, there are improvements. You know, design may be a little bit better, the processor may be a little bit faster, but in real life use, I don't actually see that much of a difference, especially for the type of photography that I do. You know, I know everyone can be a little bit different. If you really need to push the camera to that sort of limit, I shoot high ISO all the time. I need AF tracking can still lock onto focus when it's pitch black. That kind of situations, then you may be getting a little bit of benefits from newer cameras. But how many of us would go to that length or do that type of photography? I think probably, like, you know, a very, very like small number of people would do that. all of us are taking snapshots on holidays or occasional birds, and you know, as a hobbyist, I don't think we go to that kind of limit to push that camera to that sort of limit.
It's kind of like all the technical advances we're getting now are aimed at smaller and smaller niches.
Yeah.
So if for example, so you've got the Fujifilm XM5, haven't you? Has that got built-in log profiles? Is it got F-log?
It's got F-log, yes.
So I'm sure there have been situations where Fujifilm has launched a new version of an older camera and say, now F-log. And you think, well, this sounds rude, doesn't it? This is what person buying a camera in that price bracket with that design would shoot log. I'd be quite surprised. It's a high-end feature in a lower-end camera, but I just think it's an example of camera makers are targeting quite narrow kind of niches within the camera's own market with its this new stuff.
Funny you mentioned about the XM5 because I have been using the XM5 actually quite intensively over the last 6 to 7 weeks professionally. So I actually ditched my Nikon ZF full frame. I ditched my OM system and used the XM5 exclusively for the past 6 weeks. The reason doing that because I was testing 2 lenses on that camera. But the more I use it, the more I found that, okay, that camera is considered to be a beginner level camera, right? You know, it's got no fancy thing, got no weather sealing, got no EVF, got no IBIS. It's a very basic camera, but it has a couple of things that really stood out to me after using it for a prolonged period of time. You know, previously when I did the review, I mean, I used it for a week or 2 here and there. Then I kind of like, it's an occasional camera when I was using it and testing it. But now, after like a really lengthy time, daily use, and I found that there are a couple of things that this camera does actually better than all the other cameras that in my collection at the moment. And one of which is the autofocus, and then and secondly, the form factor. And it's strange when I said that because like as a professional, you want something that is ergonomically good, you know, when you're holding big lenses and things like that. And also IBIS, you know, we're so accustomed to cameras having IBIS, you know, you give you the stable image projection through the EVF or the back screen. You kind of get used to that sort of stabilization when you compose your picture. I didn't have none of that. So when I was shooting, you know, obviously things were shaking all over the place, and I have to look at the EVF rather than the the back screen rather than the EVF. So in bright daylight, I have to crank the brightness all the way up to the maximum before I can even see anything. So there are obviously some downsides to it. But like I said, this camera, what it does good is the autofocus, because I actually think for some reasons, look, we talked about this before, the autofocus on the XM5 behaves like significantly better than the flagship, or you know, the flagship level XT5 by quite a margin. It locks onto the subject continuously. I mean, I actually rarely touch single AF. I was using CF all the time with that camera, and it locks onto the subject almost every single frame. I rarely have any misfocus on it. Even when the kid was bouncing up and down, left and right, running away towards me, all kinds of direction randomly, the AF picks up the eye perfect. You know, there's no problem with that. Even, you know, we talked about it many times right before. A lot of cameras struggle in backlit situation, right? You know, we remember talking a little bit about that before. The ZFC struggled big time with that. The OM system struggled big time with that. The Lumix camera struggle also big time with backlit situations. They just can't lock onto the face and eyes. The XM5 actually does, which is to my surprise.
So here's a question for you. Do you think then that by continually refining lower end cameras, camera makers are undermining their professional ones?
I think the point I'm trying to bring is,
come on, yeah.
Sure. The point that I'm trying to make is actually is what we need as a photographer. You know, like a very basic fundamental cameras does the job brilliantly. You know, do we need more than what is currently offered in the basic level, beginner level cameras? You know, like as a competent photographer, you and I know, and everybody knows like exposure triangle. You know, as long as we can control those three elements, you know, we're set. I mean, AF obviously is the next critical thing. You know, you want to nail the focus quickly and accurately. You know, from today's photography anyway. You know, like in the past, everything is still. You know, you sit still for photos, but these days it's more dynamic. So like having a good AF, it really helps. So good AF controls. I think that the main thing. IBIS, yes and no. I guess depending on the usage and also what sort of photography you'll be doing. But in my line of work, yes, it would be good to have IBIS. You know, it definitely won't give me dizziness or seasickness. But then, like overall, when I was using the XM5, I didn't feel that I was lacking in any way. I mean, the main thing for me is obviously nailing the focus, and that the XM5 does a brilliant job for nailing the focus in all kinds of lighting conditions. I haven't actually find almost any flaw with it after using for a long time.
So what's your moral from this, Jimmy? You saying don't buy expensive cameras anymore?
No, I just want camera manufacturers to really focusing on, you know. Okay, yeah, about today's subject, what refinement. You need to refine to the point that you need to perfect something before you bring out something new. And you know, I think that a lot of people may not understand when a company decides to change sensors, for instance. It makes a change, and that change may not be as smooth as people may think. OM System did the same thing with the transitioning from the traditional live mode sensor to the BSI sensor. From the old EM1 to the OM1, that step was too big a step. I think the AF was a little bit lagging. You know, initially they did a lot of firmware over the last couple of years to refine it, to make it a little bit better. Same thing happened to all kinds of stuff, right? You know, the Fujifilm, they transitioning from the 26 megapixel, the one that we have on the XM5 now, to the 40 megapixel on the XT5 and so forth. And everyone knows that the AF isn't exactly great in the 40 megapixel camera. And I have witnessed it. I tested the XT5 and I found it to be somewhat worse than any other camera that I was using, even though that it has, you know, quite a big megapixel sensor and also quite detailed files. But there's no point having detail file if the focus is off or you can't gain focus. So to me, even though that, you know, I have a very low end camera, but I'm getting the shot. So I think that's the main thing. It's almost like, you know, whether you want a sharp shot or you want a blur shot.
I think I've found that with OM System that the older sensors, where I've found more reliable for AF than the quad pixel sensor in the OM1, which technically should be far superior. But I just don't think that it's quite there with the accuracy and predictability yet. I think the thing that sticks in my mind, I mean, I'll try to be quite open-minded about this. I have a lot of older cameras. I own some new cameras, and I test a lot of newer cameras. And I think you have to be clear about what you need the camera to do. So at the moment, in my cupboard, I've got 3 24 megapixel full frame cameras. So I've got a EOS R8, which is relatively new. I've got Sony A7 II, which is older, and the Nikon D610 DSLR, which is the oldest of the lot. Now, if I'm just going to take still photographs, they all do it.
Yeah.
The results are very much the same. My Canon doesn't really have any advantage over the old Nikon D610. It's only when you come to do things like video that the EOS R8 is especially good, and for AF subject recognition and tracking is really very good indeed. But these are comparatively niche uses, aren't they? If you do this stuff all the time, then an older camera is no good. But if you do mostly single shot stills photography, then very often newer cameras, the refinements are in directions that you don't really need.
No.
So I think I think refinements are good as long as they're refinements to things that you actually use.
No, yeah, don't get me wrong. I think refinement is definitely good by perfecting certain things for the end users, and I think it's a good thing. But at the same time, for the past, I would say 20 years, since the big kind of jump from analog photography to digital, then from DSLR to mirrorless, these are the kind of like the two big jumps in the industry for the past like 20, 30 years. But we're now in the age that where mirrorless technology is mature. It's definitely fully mature now. We are seeing mirrorless cameras the way they are now are more or less the same across the board. Different brands, different formats. They're all going to have certain features that we come to accustomed to mirrorless cameras, like electronic viewfinder is no longer OVF, so those are DSLRs or SLRs, and we come to expect at least IBIS. That's another kind of like a mirrorless trademark. The subject recognitions, AI subject tracking recognition for the past few years, and these are like a standard things now. These are technologies that we're becoming to expect that the new mirrorless camera is going to have those features, at least have those features, or better in those kind of features, new iterations, new sort of accuracies or speed actually associating to these features. But at the same time, we're not seeing any more big jumps anymore. They are more or less the same features, just being refined for the future.
Do you feel you see big improvements in noise, high ISO performance? I think we've seen massive improvements over 10 years, but I'm not sure we see big improvements between one version of a camera and the next, even though we're told that there are.
Absolutely no. Well, actually, yeah. But if you look at the marketing materials, even the press releases for the last 4 to 5 years, you don't really see camera brands actually saying anything about noise performance anymore. I think that's very rare now. They would quote the ISO range, but they don't really say, "Oh, we are a stop better. We are 2 stop better." They don't talk about it anymore. I think we've come to the point that it's definitely reaching the maximum that we can achieve in terms of noise performance up to a certain level, which is the normal range of what we shoot these days, like between base ISO to, let's say, 6400. This is kind of like a normal range everybody shoots these days. And I don't see any more improvement over that. And even if there is any sort of deficiencies, and that can be compensated or enhanced with software these days. The likes of Pure, Topaz, and even Lightroom has this AI noise reduction, which does a brilliant job in removing most of the luminance and color noises, and bring you a clean file afterward. So I just don't really see that anymore.
By the way, I'm sure any Lightroom users out there will have noticed this, but I'll mention it anyway.
Yep.
The latest version of Lightroom, the enhanced AI noise reduction, no longer requires the creation of a new DNG file. It's integrated into the workflow, which is a major step forward. If it's as good as DxO, that'd be even better. But it's still worth having, and it's integrated now, and you don't have to create a new file.
Right. Funny enough, you mentioned that. Okay, I have long been a DxO supporter. I just want to ask how many of you use DxO Pure Raw to enhance your raw files? Because I would like to hear from your experience. And how many of you also use Lightroom as well? Because I would like you to try to compare those two. Right? A reason that I bring that up is I always think DxO brings me better files. I always believe that. And but 2 months ago, I had a photo shoot where I had to do some very extreme lighting scenarios when I encountered the very extreme lighting conditions, shooting some portraits. And I didn't use any sort of artificial lights for that shoot. So pure just natural light photography. And it was kind of dim, so I had to basically push the camera to its limit. And so I come home, I try to enhance the file so I can do a little bit of massaging the files and bring up the shadows or whatnot. What I found is that Lightroom actually gave me better details, right? And before you jump into conclusion, let me explain to you. So I put the whole set of files into DxO, do a batch process. So I selected all the goodies and comes with the Pure Raw version 4 now, Pure Raw 4, I think the latest one.
5.
5, yeah. I
Five.
have the Pure Raw 5, so I've been doing that with Pure Raw 5. Do the new enhancements, including the lens profile. Everything's done by default. The file turns out all right when I first look at them. They look nice and clean, nice and detailed. Everything seems to be quite good. Then I did another set in Lightroom, just to see the difference. And to my surprise, I'm not entirely sure what happened with the DxO files, especially on faces, right? And so when the subject is quite small in the frame, not small enough that you can't tell the eyes and mouth and things like that, so you can still visibly see the features of the face. It's somehow the eyes and the nose and those kind of all smushed up together by the whatever enhancement that they did in DxO. So when I look at the raw file, yes, there is a little bit of noise there. So the detail wasn't there to start with. So DxO kind of did some guesstimated work when they do some enhancement, I believe.
I think perhaps I've seen this effect in very finely textured grass as well. I think perhaps what is happening is the pure or deep prime will reconstruct the detail when there's enough information. Yeah. And if there isn't enough, it'll just give up and give you nothing.
And
I suspect that.
And I think that may be the problem, because Lightroom has dealt with that completely differently. So instead of trying to reconstruct the detail, it's just simply trying to remove the noise. So they leave the more or less the lines there, even though they may not be solidly sharp lines, but they left the lines there. So it looks a little bit natural, even after noise reduction. And if you apply some just like generic sharpening in Lightroom, it actually recovers some of the softness and bring back a more natural looking faces in a photo than the one that the DxO has constructed.
Interesting. I think probably depends on whether you use D Prime versus D Prime XD. Yeah. Because apparently they're designed to give different results. I thought one was simply better than the other, but they're different. But anyway, the whole noise thing, that seems to have gone away, doesn't it?
It has.
So, so my other question for you, Jim, is even though every camera has a better IBIS rating than the one before, do you think IBIS and stabilization are actually getting better, or is it just a smokescreen with big numbers?
I also think it's similar to ISO. I think we already reached the plateau. I don't see any more significant improvement that can be achieved physically, to be quite honest. Even in Michael Four Thirds terms, we're already getting some crazy stabilization like 5 years ago. Even when they were advertising 6-stop, we already saying, oh wow, that's amazing. You can really do a lot with that 6-stop. And now we got 7.5 stop. Okay, it doesn't sound a lot, a stop and a half more over 5 years. But I don't see a significant difference there, to be honest, for that 1.5 stop.
I think what I've seen is that camera makers are getting more and more specific about the lenses and the conditions in which the tests are carried out. Because years ago, they'd say 5 stops and they wouldn't give you any conditions. Now they're saying 8 stops with this particular lens. Oh, and it's 5 stops at the periphery. So I think they're just getting a bit more selective about the figures. So instead of giving us a kind of you can get this every time figure, they're giving us an amazing figure under some circumstances. I'm not sure IBIS has actually got any better. I think it's pretty much the same.
I believe so. I mean, and that's probably exactly what today's talk about, and is how much further are we seeing now in today's cameras? All these features and numbers and things that they rave about in all the social media and everything like that. Are we really seeing that better camera, compared to one that we already bought 2 years ago?
Our lens is getting better.
Lenses are getting better.
Do you think so?
I think so. I think lenses are getting better. In slightly different way that we see it. I think optically, once again, depending on budget, right? If money is no concern, you buy the latest, you buy the top end of the cameras, and you will get better results. But that's like always have been for in the camera industry. But I think that lenses are getting more compact with the same performance. I think lenses are getting lighter. So whether the choice of material that they use there, I think design-wise they may have changed a little bit, used the different elements. A lot of these elements are now artificially manufactured. They're no longer like ground, glass and things like that. A lot of these are plastic as well. So it's changing. I think that to make the end user a little bit better, we used to, let's say like the old 70-200 could be weighing about like 1.5 kilo, and now you can get the 70-200 2.8 for about a kilo. So it's about 500 grams saving. So that's a big saving in terms of like design, and they're also more compact, more smaller as well.
I think possibly part of that is due to the use of the availability of more exotic glasses, which probably cost more, as we found out. But also I think that digital correction has now become standard.
Yes.
So that the manufacturers can make more compact lenses because they can rely on digital correction subsequently to remove aberrations that previously would have needed a lot more glass and a lot more weight. And I don't have anything against that in principle, but it would be, when we're thinking about whether lenses are getting better, maybe we ought to consider that they're getting better because they're being corrected digitally as well as optically. It's interesting. It's a cheap Canon RF 24-50 kit zoom, retracting kit zoom, which is very plasticky and cheap and light, and it's got absolutely horrendous barrel distortion uncorrected. So digital corrections are essential. But the weird thing is that once it is corrected digitally, it's actually rather good. It is better than a kit lens would have been in years gone by. So I'm not knocking it particularly.
It's definitely that, and I think it only works for, it definitely works for photography, because photography is easy. Once the lens profile is adapted, it works on both JPEG and RAW. But my only concerns about the digital correction is that if you shoot normal compressed videos, even with ProRes and things like that, and they're fine, they're corrected in the camera. But if you shoot raw video, they're not. So like all the distortion, all the defects of the lenses will actually come through the actual video file, the raw video footage. So you have to correct it in post. And by doing so, you will be losing pixels because, but the way you compose everything is slightly different when you see, like, let's say barrel distortion. It can be problematic if you don't, if you're not used to it.
It could also have a very complex form, so it's not a simple spherical correction. It's much more complex than that. It can't apply generic correction. But in my case, for example, I've got a couple of the cheaper consumer lenses for my EOS R8 because they're light, cheap, and convenient. But I use Capture One, which is a little bit snobbish about its lens profiles and doesn't have a lens profile for my Canon RF 24-105. And I can't use the raw files in Capture One because they need too much. They need more digital correction than Capture One has available in its manual adjustments. So I think digital corrections, they're fine in principle, but if you're a camera maker like Canon and you don't embed them in the raw files, you're asking for trouble. Because with Sony, Fujifilm, Nikon, I think, and your own system, your raw files will always contain a basic correction profile that if the software doesn't have one of its own, it can fall back on that. But you don't get that with Canon. So I think digital corrections are not the best thing ever. And while lenses, the results from modern lenses have improved, I think they improved by a route that can cause us problems. As you said, for video, where you can't, it's great that we can shoot raw video. It just turns out there are no lenses anymore that aren't distorted.
Well,
which is an issue.
One thing I have to say that the main improvement to me that I see lenses these days is sharpness. Definitely
edge to edge, particularly.
when you compare to older lenses, and you can definitely see the newer generations of lenses are definitely sharper if you compare light for light and with the same sensors and things like that. Because older lenses, especially those from the DSLR era, you know, like a lot of them were legacy lenses coming from the film era, and yeah, and those, you know, back in the film days, you know, pixel sharpness wasn't even a discussion, right? You know, we don't really care about that. So, but nowadays, because people analyze them, you know, people are looking at the ones and zeros. You know, they blow up 400% to look at the sharpness, and you will see that difference between the older legacy lenses to the newer lenses. Even lenses that come 10 years ago compared to the one that released in the last couple of years, you actually do see the difference in sharpness. You like it or not, that's another thing, because nowadays that people are thinking images are too sharp. They actually put mix filters to de-sharpen it. And yeah, that's another thing.
I think something else that's happened is that camera makers have shifted from aliasing filters in front of sensors to not having them.
Yeah.
So that has led to images looking a bit sharper these days. I do think lenses got better, but you still have to pay proper money for proper lenses.
Yeah.
I don't think cheap lenses today are a lot better than cheap lenses 10 years ago. Having said that, though, if I go back to some of my old images from 10 or 15 years ago and look at them closely, I think, my God, that's a bad lens. What the heck? I was happy with that.
Well, mind you, I had that experience even as early as when the first EM5 came out. That was 2012. That's 13 years ago. And I remember I picked up the Olympus EM5 Mark 1, the very first one in Hong Kong, that came with the kit lens, the 12-50 EZ, the electronic zoom lens. So it's a kit lens that came with the camera. So
that 12-50.
Yeah, it wasn't particularly a good lens. And it's just a kit lens, right? You know, it's a basic kit lens. And but you know what? Yeah, when I first looked at the files, I was comparing to my then professional camera, the Canon 1D and a 5D, and I have the 24-70L lenses, you know, the professional series lenses. I looked at the EM5 and the images coming from that EM5 and the 12-50 EZ lens. It looks comparable, if not slightly better in sharpness only. I'm not talking about anything else.
Yeah.
Comparable to, you know, the files coming off of my DSLR at the time. And I thought, well, hang on a second, this is a cheap kit lens. It wasn't even anything like professional, wasn't in pro lens or even mid-range lens. This is a low-level lens. So I think, you know, there are multiple things going on there, whether it's the sensors, and the actual design of the lens for mirrorless is different to the one that using with the DSLR. So maybe there was actually slightly misaligned, you know, like, because DSLR is slightly different to digital mirrorless cameras in terms of focusing. So it's quite different. So I'm not entirely sure what happened there, but to be quite honest, I was actually shocked by the file coming off from a kit lens 12 years ago.
I think my experience of Micro Four Thirds has always been that a full frame sensor gives me overall better quality, but when it comes to lenses, I can afford better lenses for MFT than I can for full frame, and I'm always quite sensitive to edge softness. So if I've got a lens that kind of loses sharpness at the edges, it really puts me off. And you don't tend to get. I can afford Micro Four Thirds lenses good enough that doesn't happen, but I can't afford that on full frame. Not just yet.
Well, a prime example. Let's use the latest release from Nikon, the brand new 24-70 2.8. You know, the brand new Nikon second generation. That lens is selling for what? To £2,800 in the UK or 2,600?
Yeah.
Very expensive, right? You can get
almost as much as Canon. Similar. Let's say similar. Yeah.
But then you look at that, you know, you can get the equivalent focal length in a Micro Four Thirds, a very good one, the 12-40 2.8 Pro. You know, it's a very spectacular zoom lens, ultra sharp.
It's very good.
In terms of sharpness, I'm not joking. They're probably equivalent, and for less than half the price, right? You know, it's a constant 2.8 aperture. You know, it's got all the goodness coming from the Pro lens, metal build, you know, it's got weather sealings and all kinds of stuff. The latest generation's got even the fluoride coating at the front, so like it's a very, very good lens for not much of a money. Just basically backing up what you just said there, you can get really quality glass in Micro Four Third compared to, you know, like a full frame or other things.
I think for me, I can accept a 20 megapixel limit on resolution. What I find harder to accept is having to dodge a lens's poor apertures or the wrong end of the zoom range or some other limitation where its performance just falls away. I don't like using lenses where you can't use the last 10% of the zoom range, or you shouldn't shoot wide open, or you shouldn't use this focal length,
Then
or,
why did you put
or
it in
whatever.
the first place?
I don't like having to dodge the limitations of lenses. I can put up with restricted resolution, providing the lens performance is consistent in all conditions.
There should be no compromises. There should be no compromises. When you get a 12 to 40 or 24 to 70, you should be allowed to use the entire range.
So this is why I kind of fell out of love with my X-T5's lenses. So the 16 to 80, Fujinon 16 to 80 and 10 to 24 were perfect specs for what I needed. Nice overlap, constant aperture, good zoom range. But with the 16 to 80, I had to remember I couldn't use it past 16 millimeters because it just went soft. And with the 10 to 24, I had to remember I couldn't use it at 24 because the edges would just go away completely. And to me, that's not acceptable. I would rather have a shorter zoom range that I can rely on, and not have lenses where I think, oh, I can't go past there. I can't shoot wider than that. But if I do this, that's going to be rubbish.
I mean, I understand that, but also at the same time, that's not an exclusive thing from Fuji as well. You know, we've seen we've seen time and time again, like different manufacturers have zoom lenses. Even OM System, there are a couple of OM System zoom lenses are exactly like that too. You know, like 70 to 300 and the 100 to 600, not 100, 100 to 400, for instance. The 400 range or the 300 range is always quite a bit softer than the shorter range.
Quite disappointing,
It's a little bit disappointing, because when you buy a lens, you really want to max it out, you know, especially those who are getting the long range lenses. Most people are getting those lenses are hoping to get the long range.
Of course. You don't buy the 100 to 400, you use it at 100, do you?
No, exactly. So you really want to use the long end.
I would say with OM System, always buy the pro lenses if you can. My point would be that they are actually affordable. Whereas on a full frame camera, G Masters and L series lenses for Canon and Nikon's pro lenses, they are serious money.
Absolutely, you know, like that's why I always like the pro lenses on my OM System and Olympus. All the 1.2 primes are spectacular, you know, for what they are, and the quality coming out from it. The 12 to 40, I really love it. The 40 to 150 is called almost a workhorse lens. You know, that thing is just brilliant, you know. And of course, you know, if you're more travel oriented, the F4 Pro lenses are spectacular as well. The 150 the 40 to 150 F4 Pro is one of my favorite travel compact zoom. I have it right here. You know, this.
Oh, Jimmy, you've knocked a plug out.
Oh,
I think you knocked a plug out.
Right.
Come back. Oh, you there?
Right. I'm trying to see if I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Turn the light off or something.
Right. I don't know. I'm telling you, my thing is not working properly today. Let me see if I can fix this. Okay.
I still hear you.
Right. I'm still okay. Still nothing. Oh, there we
you're
go.
You're back. Maybe you need a refinement to your deck there.
Maybe.
So I mean, the thing is with refinements, how much do we think we ought to pay for them, or is it just an excuse for the camera makers to bump the price? Not always. I'm just answering the question. No.
Yeah. I don't know. Or are we just simply expecting a lot these days? So since the beginning of mirrorless evolution, and then are we just simply being spoiled by manufacturers of every generation of cameras they release? You know, we always expect something big, great improvement coming to the camera, And the last few years we don't have that, and we people, all of us feeling a little bit disappointed, right? You know, every time there's a new release, it's like that again. Oh man, it's not that much of a difference.
But if you look at the Ricoh GR4,
oh yes,
which is about £1,500 or dollars now, and the old one
in the UK is I think 1199, so 1200 I think.
Is it?
Yeah. Or 1099, yeah.
For the GR4. Oh, that's interesting. I thought it's more than that.
No,
so
I think it's about £150 premium to the old one.
So that's really not so bad, is it? And we talked before this about the OM5 Mark II costing the same as the old one, which is quite impressive. $11.99. You're right. Yeah.
The launch price of the OM1 Mark II actually is cheaper than the OM1 Mark I. The launch price, I think it's £100. I think it's £100 cheaper. I think the launch price body only is actually cheaper than the OM5 when it first came out. So that is quite interesting, and I think it reflects better on a company when you do something like this, because you're getting refinement, more refined, better camera, of course, but for cheaper price. Unless something drastic happen, have brand new sensor, brand new technology, and you pay more. Yeah, that I think that's fair. But for the likes of a lot of these newer camera, like GR4 for instance, okay, it's got a new shell, so is OM5. But when you look deeper, when you dig deeper about the camera on itself, how you're gonna use it is not going to be that much different than the GR3, and I don't think you're going to get particularly difference in terms of image quality, even though it's got a new lens developed specifically for GR4, same focal length, same aperture still, but then it's apparently a new design. But you're not going to get different images, right? You're not going to get that much of a different image, and you're still going to shoot the GR the same way you do with the GR3 or GR2 before that. You're still going to use it as the same way. I don't see how you would change your shooting behavior because you got a newer camera. And that's another thing we perhaps we haven't really dig too much of, is you as a photographer, how your habit, your shooting style, that dictates a lot of how you shoot and the image quality coming out from it, because of how you anticipate to use the camera.
It's how you gel with the camera, isn't it? How you work together.
Yeah.
Can I call out what looks to me like a very interesting refinement? And we spoke briefly about it before the show.
Sure.
Hasselblad XD2 100C, little outside of our price range for most of us. The original model sells for $8,199.
Yeah.
The new one, which has improved IBIS, improved autofocus, and improved color rendering, $7,399. It's $800 cheaper.
Yeah.
So here for once is a new and improved version of a camera that's considerably cheaper than the one that went before. Is that a record? I don't know if that's ever happened before, or is this just Hasselblad saying, "Do you know what? It was a bit dear. We'll bring it down a bit."
It's either that, or I mean, like I already mentioned, the OM5 as well as the same thing. Mark II is cheaper than the Mark I when it first came out, so they actually reduced the price. I'm not entirely sure. If let's say if they make more money in the first go, but that doesn't really translate that they should be selling less for the second go, because there will be a new mold, will be a new electronic underneath. Things will be a little bit different. From the R&D point of view, they spend the money already. They have done so much on it.
Yeah.
So it's interesting for this tactics going on, whether they have another way of making money in the long run, thinking about, okay, we're gonna maybe do what we used to do in the film industry. You get you into the camera, buying a camera because you have to stick with that mount, right? And so you have to buy lenses.
That's a very cynical interpretation of a price drop, Jimmy. I mean, let's be fair. For a new camera to cost less than the old one, that can't be bad, can it?
No, I think it's good for us, right?
No.
It's good for us.
So in some ways, refinement could include price refinement. If you look at the Fujifilm GFX series, when the first GFX 100 came out, that was 10 grand.
Oh yeah.
And now
yeah,
the
yeah.
GFX 100 II and GFX 100S, they're little more than half that.
Yeah.
So, prices can go down as well as up. So it's not all bad. But I think what we do see a lot at the lower end of the market and the smaller formats is that as well as all these refinements, we tend to get a bit of a price bump as well.
Yeah, but then
not always, but sometimes.
But then again, the other side of me is thinking, because first of all, let's look at the mainstream camera. We're not talking about Hasselblad, but let's look at the mainstream cameras. We no longer have entry level cameras. We don't have like the likes of EM10. We don't have the really low end cameras, like the old DSLR days. When you have the Canon 100D, all of these really cheap, like £400-500 digital camera. You don't really get that anymore.
Well, we've got the Canon EOS R100, which is very cheap. In every possible way. Panasonic Lumix G97, which is really the G90 or G95 all over again. That's quite cheap. XM5, that's not very dear.
No, but then again, you're not really getting to that sub £500 mark, which we used to have.
I think that's gone. That's gone. So is there a part of you that thinks the camera makers have said, do you know what? These cheap cameras, we're going to make them so much better for you. Oh, by the way, they'll cost 900 quid, not 400.
Exactly. I mean, I think. Well, if you look at the OM5, it's more or less the entry level for OM system camera for the Micro Four Third side of it, and because the next one up is OM3, then the OM1. They literally only have 3 cameras at the moment, and if you look at all the other brands, it's probably similar in the similar kind of structure. You don't have the cheap camera, the £400-600 camera. You have to jump straight into the 800 mark. 900 mark before you get into the system. So indirectly they're bumping up the price basically, and then
are they bumping up the price with things we didn't ask for?
Yes and no. Okay, it depends on brand though. I think because if you look at I'm more familiar with OM system stuff at the moment, so let's talk about OM system. I think OM5 is a very good proposition. Like we remember all the entry level cameras before all this happened. The EM10, the EP7, for instance, none of these were weather sealed. The EM10, the EM10 even it hasn't got 5-axis stabilization. Most of them were 3-axis stabilization. Now the OM5, it's more expensive, but it's weather sealed. It's got proper 5-axis stabilization and better 5-axis stabilization than before. It's got hybrid focusing, not contrast detect, so you can do some tracking. You can do some light sports stuff. So it is a much better camera. So it's charging accordingly, but not over the top. So I think OM System may have done the pricing right for the latest series of cameras. Other camera series may have done similarly, like the XM5 that I just talked about. I quite like it. It's almost like a pro spec camera, but there are several things that's been omitted, like the IBIS and the EVF, for instance. If you want those, you have to jump straight into the XS20. Then you get those stuff basically, but you're paying like £200-300 more for that camera. So I think that's the new way of thinking now, and whether that makes financial sense, maybe only the company can tell us in the future. But at the same time, I think what Hasselblad has done with the XD2 Mark II is that they lower the price. They really trying to maybe reassert themselves. Okay, I'm still here, and look, it's slightly more affordable now. We can compete at least to the likes of Fujifilm, for instance, and get into Hasselblad. Once you get in there, the thing is there is absolutely no third party making lenses for Hasselblad. So once you get the camera, you have to get their lenses.
That is true. Though those XCD lenses are expensive,
yes,
but they are spectacularly good.
Yeah.
You won't get a dud. But it's like buying into Leica, isn't it? You have to know
absolutely.
You have to know what you're in for. But if you've got the budget for it, then it's the way to go. But I think it does make things interesting because there's now much less of a gap between something like that Hasselblad and good Leica M, or even stuff like Canon EOS R5. Too. So that's probably £2,000-3,000 cheaper at most So you're kind of in the same order of magnitude now. 100
Yeah.
megapixel medium format
Yeah.
is always going to trump best full frame cameras for stills photography. So I think it's made things very interesting.
Yeah, and in some way, I still think that however you look at it in today's market, and all the camera manufacturers, all the cameras that we have now in 2025, I don't think any of these are actually aiming for the mass market. When I say mass market, it's like not for people who are using the iPhone to snap photos on a daily basis. That, you know, it's not those people. We are talking about those who are already shooting for a while. So it's very different market these days, and we talked about it in over the last few talks already. You know, we are fighting within the camera the same pool of people for the past 20 years, and it's unhealthy. You know, like we talked about it. You know, it's just how you're gonna get people to buy more cameras. I don't think you're supposed to keep pumping a new camera and expect people to just jump straight into the buy newer camera just because influencer A say this, influencer B said that, or, you know, some sort of marketing material really raving about certain features and numbers.
I think whatever we individually might think about influencers online, they have kept stills photography very much alive at a time when it might have kind of faded out of view, because they're into this hipster retro lo-fi kind of imaging, which is kind of keeping the whole thing going. But it does mean that people are becoming aware that they can buy a used camera that does everything they want it to. Yeah. They don't have to buy a new one. But just to go back to OM system, I've got another question for you, Jimmy. You might say that a refinement for the next OM5 would be the stacked sensor. Would that be wise? If it pushed up the price by $300?
No,
which it might.
I think, you know what? If I'm OM system, I would keep the BSI for the top end cameras. I will still use live mode sensor, but I may use the Panasonic sensor. You know, up the resolution, but keeping as a normal CMOS sensor instead of the BSI, and because for the target audience of the OM5 isn't about speed. You know, and it's never about speed, so it doesn't need the speed from a BSI sensor.
No.
So in that sense, I think it's probably better off trading for the speed to slightly higher performance, high resolution sensor over the actual speed itself. But never say that. Yeah, and nonetheless, you know, the BSI could go up high resolutions as well. So we just don't know at the moment.
Or I might say, well, you can have the OM5 Mark III and you can have the SAC sensor, but you can't have the weather sealing. That's had to go. Or you can't have the IBIS.
No.
So no. I'm just saying that very often. Very often it seems we get refinements that quietly push other things out the door.
Well, one thing I'm pretty sure everyone who is using OM system would probably agree. The one thing that everyone's get a little bit upset about the OM5 Mark II is the ditch of compatibility of that tiny little flash that used to come with the camera. You know,
do people still use flash?
Well, apparently people are very upset about that. You know. So when you because a lot of people who buying the older Olympus cameras, the OM system camera, come with that little flash that used, you know, it's quite handy for field flash, and quite pocketable. You can shove it in the camera bag, you know, without noticing it. Quite often you lose them. I lost a couple already, and then you know, it's useful sometimes, you know, because it's such a small thing. You don't care. Just shove it in the camera bag and without having to worry about it. But the OM5 Mark II ditched the compatibility of that flash, so you don't gain support of TTL, for instance, so you can't control it basically.
So what's the opposite of refinement? What's the word that's the opposite of refinement? I don't know. Is there one?
I don't know.
No, devolution. That's not it. The other thing that went was compatibility. Yeah, with that little grip.
Oh yes,
which I thought the EG something or other.
Yeah,
which I thought was very good because it gave the OM5 and the M5 Mark III very nice handling.
Well, the thing is, I think personally, it's down to cost because obviously the new camera has a new grip, so it's a new profile. So the
Yeah.
old OM5 grip won't fit to the new body. So to
No.
make a new grip, they need new tooling, they need new mold, they need new things, and it's quite a costly thing. If they don't sell many, it's a pure lost exercise. So
And just out of interest, I know a lot of people were worried about the breaking the bottom plate on the M5 and the M5 III and before. No, it's just those two, wasn't it? Because it tended to crack or fracture with extended tripod use. If you use the grip, was the grip a bit tougher? I never tried it out. I never broke my base plate anyway. But
you mean the bottom plate?
Yeah, the bottom plate. So when on the older cameras you had the
Yeah.
grip, because I had one for a while,
Yep.
you screwed the tripod into that instead. I wondered if that would solve the problem.
I mean, if you're that worried about it, yes, the best thing is to do put L bracket to put L bracket on it. And I think
I never broke it. I never broke mine.
I mean, it's very isolated, but I've seen people showing pictures of how it ripped and things like that. But when it's been questioned about the setup that they were using cameras and when they were clipping whether it's going to be the PGY Tech Turtle clip or the Peak Design quick release clip, is they use heavier lenses. So they use the 12 to 100 f4 Pro or even the 40 to 150 f4 Pro. These are heavier lenses. So when you have a heavy lens, it's not designed to take that kind of weight.
Also, it's very easy to give your camera gear a whack when it's on the tripod or even knock it over. So you never quite know the circumstances. I've every sympathy for people who broke them. I just didn't do it myself.
And also don't forget it when you clip it to, let's say, your shoulder strap or your camera backpack strap. When you walk, when you do a hike, or when you do like a jog, the camera is constantly swinging.
I'm not a big fan of capture clips myself for that reason, because they're great in principle. Well, when you do clip them to a strap or even to your waist belt, it's fine when it's standing still, but then when you start moving, there's too much, as an engineer would say, too much polar inertia for the base plate.
I mean, I
too much
think
leverage.
so. I mean, to be honest, I mean, even it's not OM5 and other cameras, you will probably see base plate if you attach anything heavier than that. So it's not exclusive. I've seen bent base plate a lot in my life, and so it's not exclusive to OM5. Because I think one of the reasons why OM5s get a particularly bad rep is because it's got a plastic cover. So like, so it actually just basically rip and break. But older camera, if it's metal, it's simply just bend. So I don't know. Either way, it's bad anyway. so no matter how you look at it. So you just have to make sure that you work within the limit of the cameras. And I think in this particular case, people are just simply exceeding it. And you're not supposed to attach it like this. I know the design of the clip's supposed to be for you to do that, but also at the same time, you're not supposed to attach big lenses on the capture clip on the shoulder like this, because when you swing around it, the force basically exert to the base plate mount itself is too great.
Yeah, never been a huge fan of capture clips for that reason. No. But I think it is true that sometimes things you liked disappear unexpectedly when cameras get improved. And I think they're just two examples.
Yeah. But now
the flash and the grip.
Let's talk a little bit about slightly different, although it's still relating to the topic. You know, we early in the chat today we talked about the big Japanese companies, kind of they're becoming a little bit too comfortable at where they are now. They seem to not care about major innovations, or they just simply don't want to think about them. They just want to keep refining what they have now, make them perfect. But the likes of some of the Chinese companies we kind of talked about, I know they're not really steel oriented, but we know they're pushing the technological front of it. The likes of DJI and also Insta360, for instance, even Hasselblad, even the XD2 Mark II using LiDAR to assist the focusing. Yeah. So that's new. That's something new. And we've been talking about LiDAR sensors for a long time now. Apple has been using LiDAR sensors as well for the past few iPhones. Technology is there, but why no other company use LiDAR as partial low light assist for the camera focusing system?
I don't know. I think possibly some people might feel that LiDAR is a cheap fix for a problem that shouldn't exist. It's like Panasonic re-released the Lumix S5. They did the S5D, didn't they? which was compatible with that add-on. Was it a LiDAR? Again, a LiDAR sensor
it's a
or
LiDAR sensor,
AF? Yeah.
yeah.
So I think possibly that made people think, oh, it's a bodge for cameras that aren't very good. So I don't know whether it's that. But I understand what you're saying about Chinese makers versus Japanese makers. But I think the cameras that we all use, where else is there to go? What technologies could we have? I'm not convinced that there is anywhere else to go with this type of camera.
No, I think more to do with how much they're willing to think outside of the box. And at the moment, I think that the Japanese companies are still thinking within that box. They're not thinking things that is drastically
they're not
different.
even designing new books.
They're not. But at the same time, the Chinese are thinking outside. They're almost like, starting from fresh, starting from clean slate. Like, okay, I got these technologies now. I invested a lot over the years, and I learned about camera making. I learned about sensor technologies. I learned about all of this stuff. How can we make something to compete? So they started with a blank sheet of paper. They started to think about it, and it did take them years to develop what they are today. But now you're seeing the technologies they bring out now is quite different to what we are seeing from other camera manufacturers.
But it's different type of product, though, isn't it?
It is and it isn't, though. Just you think about it, and in the imaging side of it, while we're talking about a lot about stills, but at the same time we look at, okay, not so much about Ricoh or Fujifilm or maybe even OM system, but if you look at like Sony's and Canon, these two companies are also heavily involved in the video side of it. And then you don't see their video cameras are that much difference for the past 20 years.
No.
They are better. No. Yes, they are better, but they are still within that same constraint of how a video camera should be technically. But if you think about looking at how the Chinese are making their video cameras now, are very, very different to what the Canon Cine line and the Sony Cine line is. Very, very different cameras.
I think camera makers, in a traditional sense that we're talking about, are making cameras more and more. They're making them better, but that's not necessarily what the market wants when they're already good enough. They want them to be able to operate in different circumstances in a different way. But I was thinking in that last conversation that, DJI ought to make a camera. And they should have a little chat with Nikon and say, remember that camera you used to make, the Nikon 1? And Nikon would say, we're not talking about that. And DJI should say, well, no, it's fine. Can we have them? Because we've got an idea. Because then they could put their 1-inch sensor tech into a camera body with interchangeable lenses. There you go. Well, I've just designed a product. Thank me later.
The funny thing about DJI is, if you look at them, okay, Hasselblad aside, they are still a member of the Micro Four Thirds Alliance. They are still actually part of it. So if they want, they can actually make Micro Four Thirds cameras, and they have done with the Inspire drone in the past, although they haven't used that in the later series. But they're still a member of it. They still have DJI branded lenses, which are technically actually the 12mm and the 17mm 1.8 lenses. But they are actually licensed products that they use from the Olympus camp. So it's interesting that they now maybe at the point that they can actually release something if they really want. Maybe something's really working at the back of, that we don't know, we're not aware of. Maybe one day they will release a consumer camera that features so many techs that we probably haven't seen before, LiDAR focusing instead of all these hybrid AF things that we've been so used to. And I don't know, some sort of clever AI exposure, high HDR thing that they've been using in the drones, but for a camera, for stills, and that we're not aware of. And all of this stuff can actually potentially happen with whatever they have now, because we can see what they can do, but what if they really do one, and that might actually shock the world. So I'm not entirely sure whether that will happen, but that's the kind of thing that I'm trying to say here, is that the Chinese are already innovating a lot of things that we don't see in the mainstream camera manufacturers.
I think they're innovating with product types that the mainstream makers don't have any background or expertise in. So I'm not sure it's a fair, direct comparison. I
No,
think the
but then
mainstream.
if I use another example, let's say the Pocket 3, that's for vlogging cameras, right? Vlogging traditionally, if you look at like back in like 12, 13 years ago, vloggers were using the traditional DSLR technologies, and at the time, if you look at Casey Neistat, the big YouTube vloggers, he was using a Canon, very cheap Canon camera DSLR, and just throw a 24 to 105 f4 ISL lenses on it, and that's what he shoot with, and put in a gun mic on top of it. That was a simple vlogging setup. Things that, of course, has evolved over time. Now we have mirrorless technology, a face detection, everything is a lot more advanced. Then we have more dedicated vlogging cameras coming up from Sony, from Lumix. With all of this camera being released over the years, and all of a sudden DJI released the Pocket 3 and wiped them all out in literally a year. And that's the worry I'm seeing. If somehow suddenly something came out and just wiped the floor.
I think that is seeing an opportunity made possible by small sensors and existing stabilization tech. I think the regular camera makers have already gone too far in a different direction.
Yeah.
To really combat that. And it could be that DJI and Insta360 have already invented the last remaining things that we could ask for, and they've got nowhere else to go either.
Perhaps, but the interesting thing about with the latest release of the new 360 drone from Insta, the anti-gravity, right? This is a new company, anti-gravity, but obviously is part of Insta 360. They are now competing with DJI, but in a very different spectrum. Right, and they're doing a 360 drone that no one else has. They're the very first to do a 360 drone. So I think it will be a very quirky camera that everyone wants to get their hands on to try it. And I personally want to try because even though I technically think that it's going to be a hassle of using it, because as much as I love 360 cameras, I just always think that the extra editing time that's involved in making them usable, it simply doesn't work well with my workflow. I think it's just too long to do everything. Even though the idea is good, you shoot first and edit later. The concept is really cool because you're capturing everything in 360, and you don't always have to worry about framing the shots and things like that or missing anything. And that is pretty cool.
But for all their innovations, don't you think that DJI and Insta360 are also guilty of producing new cameras which are essentially refinements of what they've made already? Because even the latest 360 cameras, you're still limited to comparatively low resolution flat video.
Yeah. But I think they are, and but there are two ways of saying it though. Remember the Insta also had a 1-inch 360 camera. And that was quite.
I don't know why that went. It was, but I don't know why it went away. It's no bigger than a Pocket 3, say. Really?
No, I think it's more to do with the price. It's just a bit too much, and people weren't.
It cost them too much to make. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just too much. So while the mainstream like the X4 was selling well, and the X3 was selling well, and now the X5, so they see that people just don't normally worry about too much about image quality to that extent, unless you are the high-end pro. But you're high-end pro, you're very unlikely to use 360. You may use it momentarily for a very specific shot. You're not going to shoot the whole entire thing with the 360 camera.
No, you might just use it for a bit of B-roll or whatever.
Yeah. So I think it's how you put it, the very niche camera for very niche use, and the volume that they're selling with the 1-inch 360 just simply too low to justify making a success of it. So they're still going to go back to the more mainstream stuff. And funny thing, why DJI want to step into 360 is another thing. Whether internally they think that, okay, now we got a drone market, literally we wipe the floor of drone market. We now wipe the floor of all the vlogging market, the Pocket 3. Why not go for the and they had the action market as well. They wipe the floor of the GoPro with the action camera, the Osmo action cameras. why don't we go for the trying to conquer another land, right? Trying to conquer the 360 land. Let's take some market share from Insta360. It seems because they are the market leader at the moment. Let's get some from them as well. I'm not sure whether this is how they think about it at the moment. They just want to dominate it. But Insta360, to be fair, just give them credit for going for that drone, because it's definitely new, definitely very new. And I would go as far as comparing Insta360 to GoPro. Right, remember years ago when GoPro released the drone, and that was a big flop on that drone. And it was poor design. It was a lot of fatal crashes, and it's just a very, very bad drone to start with. They just literally stopped making them after a year. It was a big loss to the company. It just wasn't right, and they went back to the standard GoPro action camera, and that is still basically the only camera that they're doing, and they haven't done anything else. While Insta360 started off as an action camera company, and they evolve and continue to push the boundary a little bit. So instead of releasing a normal drone to compete with DJI, like what GoPro did, they released a 360 drone. So it's a bit late, it's not. But there is still the first 360 drone ever. There's no one else that does a drone like this. So at least it's different. So it would be curious to see how well they sell this drone, how successful they are for this particular drone.
360 is a very complex concept to get across to end users because, as you say, the editing is the problematic thing. I think the idea that you can have a kind of VR video that you can spin around and watch and consume, I don't think people are doing that anymore. I think people are just using them to reframe a shot however they want to.
But having said that, there's one thing that stood out to me from this brand new 360 drone isn't actually about capturing or making film out of it. And one thing that really stood out for me from the marketing material that I see at the moment is how you can wear that goggle and have that immersive a flying experience, right? So at the moment, if you're flying a DJI drone, that's something actually DJI started with the very first goggle in the original Mavic Pro. So I don't know if any of you are familiar with DJI drones in the past, and that massive goggle they used to have to wear on your head, you can connect that to the Mavic Pro through the controller. So when you turn your head, the camera also moves left and right as well. So you can almost see that like a POV style, but you actually almost like you're sitting in a cockpit looking through it.
It's so incredibly disorientating flying a drone in the first place.
Yeah.
The last thing you need is to be able to look in a different direction to the way the drone is going. That's just my feeling.
I guess I had that goggle. It's actually quite fun. Yeah. But the difference between the 360 now in today compared to what we used to have, because it's 360, you can actually, while flying straight, you can actually move in any direction to see anything.
I get vertigo, Jimmy. I'll just throw up. That wouldn't work for me.
But it sounded cool to me because it's almost like you're actually flying. I think it's quite an immersive experience, not just to capture the video, but actually flying it and look around freely, without having to look at the screen and controlling the drone, because they don't give you a controller. Don't forget that, I think they said they're going to release a controller, but at the moment you're going to have to using motion control. So it's a very intuitive way to fly, almost like you're just wiggling around the wrist and change the direction of the flight. But at the same time, you can just look around and do all sorts of stuff. It's actually pretty cool. I think that's something that I definitely want to try personally. But do I want to film with that thing? Probably not.
I've had some terrible experiences with drones, Jimmy. First time I flew mine, I took all the heads off my geraniums. It's in a back garden. I got the left and right seats confused and descended onto the geraniums, and the rotors took all the blooms off. And then another time I took it on holiday, flew it over a river, and that's when I found out that the height sensor doesn't work over water.
Yeah.
And I was there was sinking gradually towards the water with me trying to get the thing to come back before it became a submarine.
I have to say that the latest drones are a lot better than that now, and I know I remember my first two drones had that problem over water. It literally can't sense the water. You keep having to adjust the altitude to compensate.
That's right. That's
Yeah,
right. And
it's very annoying.
and also my drone struggled with a 3 mile an hour headwind. You have to be very careful about the routes you took because you
Yeah,
might fly out fine and then you couldn't come back.
yeah,
But
yeah. You know, I
just
have to say, you know,
novice
things has
problems.
moved on quite a bit since, and especially
Yes.
those with GPS and all kinds of like safety sensors and things, they can actually fly back quite safely now. And because once you have about 20 satellite locked on, you know your position is almost accurate to the point to 1 feet kind of radius in from the takeoff point, so it's quite accurate.
So if I may, if I could draw us back gently to where we started, which is continuous refinements.
Yeah,
I think with the cameras we use every day, there aren't many places left to go. But
no,
with 360 imaging drones and smaller video devices,
yeah,
that's where there's still room for advancement. So I don't think we can blame camera makers for not doing anything new,
yeah.
because I think everything's already been done.
Mm.
That's my feeling at the
No,
moment.
that's a fair statement. But then my question would be, how
Why did we just
can
stop and make them cheaper?
yeah, that would be good. Yeah, how can we like, you know, like make the camera industry better? I think that's the general consensus that, you know, while people are fighting, you know, blood and sweat, you know, against each other and trying to, you know, sabotage each other's market share, because like I said already, they're all fighting with the same pool of people within the industry. The industry is not expanding. In fact, it's actually shrinking because either people are getting too old, stop making photography, or there is no new younger photographer coming in. So the population photographer actually decreasing in the enthusiast market anyway. People are still taking photos by taking photos with smartphones and other devices.
or or they're
Yeah,
taking photographs with cameras that have already been made. They
yeah.
don't. We've already got enough cameras out there.
So how can we
Uh,
make it better then? I think that
um,
will be the big question that everyone try to answer that, right?
who's Seraphim mate said something a little while back saying um, something about batteries. It was also nice for mics that didn't need batteries. This is something I think we could. Why can't hybrid mirrorless cameras have V-lock batteries? That's what they're called, isn't it? Those batteries that slot in.
Yeah,
You usually get them on lights, don't you?
yeah,
And why can't your camera power your monitor and your lights and your microphone? Otherwise, before you go on every shoot, you've got to think, oh, is my camera charged? And my extra camera battery's charged. Did I charge the mics? That's two transmitters and no, it's two transmitters because you wouldn't charge the receiver, would you? Have I charged my lights?
yeah.
Is my external monitor charged? That's a bit of a drag. It'd be nice to have one central power source.
And also, and I mean, now you mentioned that. I mean, I think there are a couple of things that I think the camera manufacturers can still improve on, is the connectivities, and not so much about social media, about like, you know, sharing things on the internet, but actual connectivity to the physical devices.
Yeah,
You see that
yeah,
the complicated ports on the side of the cameras. You know, they got the mic input jack, they got the headphone jack, and then they
yeah,
have the HDMI port, they have the
yeah,
USB-C port.
yeah.
The thing
And
is,
remote sockets sometimes.
yeah, remote
Re-
sockets
Yeah,
sometimes. Some of them still have the flash sync
yeah,
socket. You know,
yeah,
um,
yeah,
the thing is, yeah, now we're at the technology time that we have a lot of things that are USB-C devices, like screen, like flashes, like lights that can be USB powered and connected. You can really ditch the HDMI quite easily these days. If you really have the HDMI support, you can get a USB-C to HDMI converter. You can connect it that way. And if you have, like, let's say two USB-C ports, both are powered and data compatible, you can use it with all sorts of stuff, connecting to mic, to monitor, to lights, to everything that you can think of. They don't do that. In a lot of the USB-C port that you see on cameras, only for charging and to data
yeah.
transfer.
And I guess though that the problem there would be that already with mirrorless cameras, you're likely to get 300 or 400 shots on a charge. The last thing you want is external devices sucking even more out of it.
Well, that is true. That is true. So, and I
Or
guess
it'd be quite.
another thing they can improve is battery, right?
What's quite neat though with smartphone gimbals is that many of them will charge the phone. Now, I
Yes.
don't know if there are any stabilizing gimbals for hybrid cameras that could charge the camera.
They
That would be quite useful.
well, technically they can if as long as the camera is capable of using PD, you know, power delivery, and
Yeah.
then you can power the
Not,
camera and use it at the same time.
you can't even rely on that still. I mean, power delivery ought to be standard on every new camera, you would think, wouldn't you? But you
Yeah,
don't always get it.
but that's what I'm saying. You know, that they have the
Yeah.
USB-C port, but like all it's so fragmented. All the cameras, you know,
Yeah.
they all have USB-C, but they all have different purposes, and none of them are very consistent. Like, oh, you can do this and do that. You know, like because to a lot of modern users, especially though with an iPad, iPhone, Android phone, computers, our USB-C ports in those devices are multi-purpose. You can connect to all sorts of stuff to it.
Yeah.
And you would have thought that you can do the same thing with the camera. No, you can't. You can't plug in a screen to it. You can't. You can't do it. You have to connect the screen to a HDMI port. If you want to use light, you probably can't because it's not. You can only accept charging, but not actually outputting power. It's a nonsense.
It's a bit
right?
of a mess. It's a bit of a mess.
Yes.
Can I also mention just once more the Hasselblad
Yep.
1 terabyte SSD built in.
Nice.
That would be nice on a regular camera, wouldn't it? Because
Absolutely.
internal SEDs are fast, a lot
Yes.
faster than any memory card.
Yes.
So
And
it
you
seems
can-
to be the ideal thing, wouldn't it?
Well, I would think so, and also like maybe you still have the memory card as a backup or
Yeah,
overflow
yeah.
if you really want to. But
Yeah.
having internal is definitely great. I think that's a DJI thing. Even the latest 360 camera has a 512 gig internal memory in the 360 camera,
Yeah.
so you technically don't even need to carry a memory card out. So
I think
again,
like
it's
Leica
good.
does it with a couple of things as well, doesn't it? I can't remember which.
like a
It's
Q
not.
has it.
It's not as much. Not
Like
as much, but it's still
I think
significant.
the
Yeah.
Q3 has internal memory. I think it's only about
Yeah.
512 a gig as well. I think it's quite large actually. It's not, or 256. I can't remember now.
Be interesting to know how fast it was, because internal SSDs they are very quick. I think
are.
the Hasselblad one is quicker than the USB not the USB than Thunderbolt.
And
Thunderbolt?
and also another thing about cameras these days, all the memory cards. I know they they can, if they want faster speed, you can jump up to CF Express and things like that. And
It's expensive.
they are expensive, and these are things that kind of put people off as well. Even like newcomers, like when they buy new cameras, okay, oh man, I buy a camera for like minimum now. If you buy a new camera, you have to fork out £900 for the camera body, and you spend another £500 for a lens, a basic lens, and I have to buy buy maybe a couple extra battery. Even if you buy third party, it costs me £50, £60, and then to buy memory cards and go on top of it. And it's a lot extra you have to buy, and you buy devices, smaller devices, like let's say, for argument's sake, buy a Insta360 or a DJI 360. It's got built-in memories. You can shoot straight away without having to worry about buying external stuff, extra stuff to go with it. As long as it's got a computer, plug it in, it works. And last extra thing you may want is probably extra battery, but that's probably it. And it's a lot of fast, and also like. It's still like there's a gap between, even though we think the modern digital cameras are very advanced, but if you look at what we just talked about, the USB-C ports all over the place at the moment, it doesn't gel well with the newer generations of people, where they're so used to this single port can do multiple things. When they see a camera, they can't do it, and it's always looks like an ancient technology.
I suppose the only thing is, if you make everything USB-C, you're still going to need about 4 of them on the camera, aren't you? For all the things you might want to plug in at the same time, or you'd have to dangle a hub out the side.
Well, but now if you think about it, the USB-C port is significantly smaller than a full-size HDMI port.
It's probably not quite as secure, but it's a lot better than Type D HDMI, isn't it? Which is awful.
Yeah.
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 No,
Absolutely.
but I'd just like to see fatter batteries in cameras. Half the time I'm complaining cameras aren't big enough, and the other half I'm complaining the batteries don't last long enough. Bigger camera, bigger battery. If it, makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Probably not to everyone else, but
then again, I know we talked about this before, but camera like battery life. Do we need to shoot more than 300 frames a day?
I think no, but that's all right if you're a good planner. Very often, you might say, "Oh look, it's snowing. I'll take the camera out. Oh wait, I didn't charge it. It's on a quarter charge. I've got 75 shots left, and it's cold." So I think if you're a good planner, then 300 or 400 shots is fine. But most of the time, my cameras are half charged because I don't bring them home and charge them ready for the next day. So I might not use them for a week. I charge them before I need them. But now and again, you need them when there's no time to charge them. So that is what I miss about DSLRs, that they're just ready to go for hours. I'm not to start that argument again, but I would like better batteries.
Yeah, but I mean, I can't see it happening unless they significantly increase the size of the battery, because the technology seems to be fairly consistent now when it comes to energy consumption wise. So if you want longer battery life, it has to go for bigger battery. I think that's the only way to go, unless there's some technology coming out that can reduce the consumption of the EVF, the back screens, and the digital processings and everything like that.
Unlikely.
So and then come to what you said about the argument about the size of the cameras, and like, want bigger battery, do you want a bigger camera? That's another thing, right? And so if people don't mind bigger camera and bigger batteries and potentially a little bit heavier because of the bigger battery, then you got longer life.
You can save a bit of battery power by having displays that shut down until the camera's up to your eye. Or there's a movement sensor or something just to turn the display off. It's interesting what you say about using the XM5 in bright light. It's the same with any camera that only has a rear screen.
Yeah.
If they could make those screens bright enough to see properly in daylight, that would be a worthwhile refinement. But I don't think the technology is there because daylight's too difficult. It's too much for a screen to overcome, really.
But yet again, like, now I witness what people are using the cameras nowadays, even though that many people buying high-end cameras, but the way they shoot with these cameras are used always and often exclusively with the back screen only. They don't use EVF. They just hold up the camera in front of them and just shoot through the back screen. And it's a new type of photographers nowadays, because most people using the iPhones or smartphone, they just hold up the lens and look through the screen to shoot. It's the new way of shooting. So they're so used to that kind of shooting style.
I was watching a vlogger using a mirrorless camera with quite a heavy lens, one-handed like this. I thought, why are they doing that? It's because they had their GoPro on the other hand filming themselves.
Oh dear. Well, actually, I did a couple of times myself.
yeah, quite. But so this is my feeling generally. The refinements are good, but I think we seem to have gone about as far as we can at the moment.
Yeah.
So they're only good if we're not being ripped off with a hugely inflated price, which mostly doesn't happen.
Yeah.
But occasionally you do get a camera updated in a way that's of no benefit to you and doesn't seem to be in line with what the camera was made for. I mean, like the original Nikon Z5 full frame mirrorless was cheap entry-level mirrorless camera, full frame, made sense. The Z5 II is 5 times as powerful, and it's also 50% more expensive. What's the point? Because it's fighting with the Z6 III. And it's no longer cheap enough to be a good entry-level full-frame mirrorless camera. So to me, that is a refinement. It's an amazing upgrade, but it's silly because it's taken a camera off in a direction that the original was never meant for. That was a puzzle to me.
Yeah, I mean, you can say that for every single manufacturer, they have a product like that, right?
Yeah.
I feel the Fujifilm XE5 is that camera as well. It's come out as a more low end entry level camera, and suddenly becoming like a premium camera, selling
$1,500 instead of $1,000. Yeah, the XE4 was a little over $1,000. Yeah, XE5 is about 16, something like that.
Yeah. So
and I understand the argument. It's a much better camera, but that isn't what we wanted. We wanted the camera as it was, slightly better, not a new camera that costs 50% more and does things we never asked for.
Yeah. it's the same. You know, I guess people never kind of satisfied in some ways. You know, like when they give you a much better camera but charge you a lot higher prices, and you complain. I mean, you give you a slightly refined cameras compared to the old models selling similar price,
it's not better.
That's not enough. It's not enough. It's tough, right? It's really tough.
You're right.
I think
right.
we are the one to blame. You know, like I think to the manufacturer, things could be a lot simpler if it wasn't because of us. I think because we expect too much these days, and you know, as a consumer, we're so used to new model every year, new improvement every year. And we want all of those for cheaper price.
we need to get real. I think the minute we find ourselves saying they haven't improved enough stuff, we need to remember, well, if they did, it wouldn't be the same camera anymore. You might just as well go up the range and buy a better camera.
Yeah.
It's like, do you remember the original Volkswagen Golf car?
Yeah.
It was quite small, fairly affordable, quite basic, and it's evolved into something twice the size, 5 times the price, 10 times the complexity. This happens with cameras. You know, what started out as basic, cheap and cheerful and functional evolves into something quite complex and technical.
Yeah, and we still say it's not enough.
We still say it's not enough, and it costs too much.
Yes.
So we want a new Golf and old Golf prices.
Yeah, it is a little bit weird now. I think that the world that we're living in. I don't know how many of you feel the same way. That have the same feeling about newer cameras and things in general. Actually, you know, if you think about like what Rod said about cars, I think it's good. It's a good alternative about similar things we're experiencing. Everything we buy these days is overcomplicated. It's definitely expensive. But do we really want these things? And you know, if you think deeper, you know. I want to drive a car. Yes, we may want to drive a nice car, but the ultimate thing is you want to get from point A to point B. You know, and you know, I think that you don't need anything more complicated than that. So same as camera, you want to take nice images. As long as you control the exposure triangle, have good performance, good AF. What more can you ask for? And you know, there are so many different cameras, different types, different features. But if you strip it all out, how often do you actually use any of those features? Like, I mean, a lot, like really use them a lot. And at most, you probably use 2 or 3 of those dedicated features, you know, depending on the type of photography you do. But other than that, you're not going to do, let's say, OM system. Do you use Direct SkyF every single day? No, unless you're doing a lot of astro stuff, right? Do you use animal tracking? I mean, I'm a portrait guy, so I don't use the animal tracking that much. And then, so it really depending on what stuff that you do. And then you find that a lot of the things are definitely excessive. I know they're trying to give everything to everybody for a product, but at the same time, some of these things is useful, but some of these things are definitely just a little bit over the top.
So I think you can. It helps to think a bit more clearly about the other cameras in the range as well. So that you might say, for example, the OM5 II, they didn't change enough. You know, they didn't go to the stack center. Well, that's what the OM1 is for. Or the OM3, or they might say, well, it's not very retro, is it? Just for very plasticky. That's what the OM3 is for. Very often, the camera you want is already there.
Yeah.
You know, you don't need a refined, upgraded version of the camera you've got, because that already has its own place in the range.
Yeah.
So I think in many ways, the OM5 Mark II not having a lot of changes was right for that camera, because all that would happen if you upgraded all those things would be that you end up with the same as the OM3 or the OM1 for more, you know, and for more money. So what was the point? And I do think that's what happened with the Nikon Z5. Nikon upgraded all these things in such a big way that it costs a lot of money to make and buy, and it's not the same proposition as the original Z5. It's a different camera for a different audience. So I think I would have said, if Nikon had asked me, I don't think they were going to be honest, or maybe I was out when he called. I would have said, just don't do much to the Z5, and if people say the video's not good enough, tell them to get the Z6 III. Just do it that way. Remember, each camera has its place. You can't make every camera. You can't make every camera as good as every other camera, because you'd be nowhere then.
No. But then one question, maybe to all of you who are listening right now, and is that, do you need a new camera release every year? I mean, I know camera makers actually release 2 or 3 cameras a year, especially the big ones like Canon and Nikon and Sony. They do like several releases a year. But like in general, let's say a particular model, do you need a new model even every 2 years? Do you think that is too frequent, for instance? I think some of you mentioned actually in one of the comments earlier on today is that, remember the old days, camera used to release like every 5, 6, 7 years, and now we are getting them every 18 months, every 20 months.
They need,
is it too frequent?
They need us to keep buying them. They need us to keep buying new cameras.
But that also puts a lot of pressure on the R&D departments, or in the marketing departments. What can you say about the new camera? I know we talk about refinement for this talk, but this is how it relating to all of these things. Like if they lengthen the product cycle, let's say every camera can last for 4 or 5 years, you can have a bigger jump in improvement, and people would be more appreciative about the new things.
Well, here's a different approach to refinement then. What if they did price refinement too? What if one of the makers was brave enough to say, we're not going to make a new camera this year, we're just going to make the ones we do make cheaper? Because we've got our R&D costs back. Yeah. We've done all the production tooling. We'll make this year 20% cheaper than last year. Now we're having 10% cheaper than last year. Same camera, cheaper.
But that's already happening, right? But that's already happening because the MSRP or the retail, the RRP, and it's a set price for the manufacturing want for the camera. So when the camera is new for the first 6 months, it will remain as RRP. But as time moves on, you start to have street prices. Like you have the RRP, but that's what the manufacturer wants. But the wholesale price is obviously a lot lower, and the retailer can start to make their discounts and do a little bit of discounting prices and have offers. So you start to get them cheaper, and by the end of cycle, you probably get about 30% off.
That's retailer marketing. I'd make it part of the mainstream marketing message. So good we made it cheaper.
A new slogan.
but there are cameras that were made 5 years ago you could still buy and use today without any problem at all. And if they were just cheaper, even better.
Yeah. Although we talked about lengthening the product cycle. In fact, if you look at Ricoh GR product cycle is very long.
Well, some Pentax cameras go away and come back years later, like the K70 disappeared years ago, and now we've got the KF, which is quite hard to tell apart from the K70. But
back from the dead.
Back from the dead, yeah. I think there are lots of older cameras that would still be very good propositions today at a lower price, because they're still very good. And I don't think there are that many cameras which have definitely reset the benchmarks for stuff in any market. I mean, perhaps the Sony A7R4 with 61 million pixels, that's a bit of a landmark camera if you need that many. I know it's not just because I've got one, but the Canon EOS R8 for having professional level autofocus, 4K full width oversampled 60p video in a cheapish camera. So that's a bit of a landmark. I can't immediately think of any others that have a big impact in the consumer market.
No,
everything else is.
That's a very good word that you use. Big impact to us consumers.
Yes.
Not necessarily big technologies, because everyone throws technologies out now. The global shutters and things like that. These are big technologies, but they don't have a big impact to our lives.
It's because there's only a handful of photographers who need that and can afford it.
Yeah. So it's true. There's not many landmark cameras that I've seen, since for a very long time now, to be quite honest.
I've just got to go and let the dog out. Be back in 2 minutes. 2 minutes.
Yep. Okay. So it's interesting because even like Chuck has said that you bought the new camera of the EM1 Mark III. That's a phenomenal camera. And in fact, man, I go as far as the EM1 Mark II. That was a game changer camera for the Micro Four Thirds community, at least. It's the very first camera to have that sort of performance, full width sensor, hybrid AF system, and just phenomenal IBIS, and just generally a great performing camera as a whole. So that is phenomenal. The EM1 Mark III is the more refined version of the Mark II. I love both cameras a lot. You know, I think both of them are really good.
Okay, Trouble's here.
Oh, Troublemaker's back. He's so excited. Oh my god. looks like
anyone thinking of getting a dog, give me a call. I've got one here.
looks like he has about 10 bags of sugar.
Yeah. She's been very good. She's been in the kitchen for a couple of hours. She doesn't have a lot of patience with live streams, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But so I'll give it about 2 minutes before she goes for the headphone cable.
Yeah, sure.
Then we'll be in trouble.
DW actually is quite interesting. I've put a comment just now. The definition old model has changed. Before it was 5 years, and now it may be 1.
I think so. I've even find myself doing that when I'm talking about cameras in articles. You know, say, oh, this so-and-so is quite old now, and you look it up, and it's launched 2 years ago.
Yeah.
It's just time seems to compress. But then again, I'm often surprised picking up cameras 10 or 12 years old and finding them much better than I remember. Because cameras haven't always got better. They've kind of evolved sideways, certainly in a physical respect. So I think very often the refinements that we look for, sometimes they go backwards compared to what we actually want. So maybe if we learned anything today, though, is that we're expecting too much, and refinements are fine as long as we don't get refinements that cost a lot of money.
No. But if I ask everybody a question before we start wrapping up today's conversation is, out of all the cameras that you have used before, at what point would you say that you would stop at that camera and you don't think you need more? Do you understand that question?
I understand the question. I'm just thinking I'd better be quiet because other people might need a chance.
So what about you then, Rod? If you have to stop at one point, which camera would you think that, okay, this camera is more than enough for me now, I can stop there?
Does this have to be one camera that does everything? Because that's tricky.
Anything you need.
Stills photography,
I
could have stopped at the Nikon D610 from 2012.
Okay.
Because I don't shoot wildlife. I don't shoot a lot of sports. I wouldn't use that for video, but then I wouldn't. The only cameras I'd use for video are probably not what we would call cameras anyway. I'd use a phone. I'd use a gimbal camera or an action camera because I think they're quite good at it. Yeah. So I would have stopped with something like the Nikon D610 because everything that came after that for stills photography has made things easier, perhaps more predictable, but not better.
Yeah. Okay.
But it wouldn't be any good for travel because, you know, you can barely get it in the car. You need a trailer to carry that thing around.
But for me, I think for me, I would say it's either the EM1 Mark II, or the newer OM3.
I think the EM1 Mark II, EM1 Mark II set a new standard, and everything else is just like a tweaking, fiddling. Since then, I think. Yeah,
I think so. I mean, I still got a EM1 Mark II. I used to have two, I sold one off, and so I still have one left. And then that's the silver version. That's the limited edition one. So I'm keeping the silver one. And I'm still happy. I'm still happy using that EM1 Mark II. Even in today, and that camera is how old now? That camera is 2000 and was this 16, 17? I can't remember exactly how old that was now. So it's pretty old now by today's standard.
The Mark I was quite good. though
Yes.
bits started coming off mine, so I'm not sure the build quality was quite there with the Mark One. But
No.
the eyepiece eye cup came off and had to be glued back on, and other things happened. But yeah, I think probably we've all got a camera we could choose that, if we're honest,
Yeah.
is all we need, and
Yep.
it's probably several years old.
Yeah. Chuck L said that E1 Mark II, E1 Mark III I bought was a second body, so that may be it. So for you, it's the E1 Mark III. Yeah, but E1 Mark III
Mark III
is
is
phenomenal.
fine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I actually used that so much that the E1 Mark III that it literally the paint all came off, on the side and edges. They spashed around. The prism housings got dents and scratches and everything, but it still works. It still works fine. So like, yeah. Now I reserve it as a backup camera now. So it's just sitting around doing nothing, and because I still have so many other cameras to use as usual. So the E1 Mark III is now retired.
I think if I had to pick one camera that is as good as I need, it would be my EOS R8. I just don't particularly like it, but we've all been there, right? The cameras at best we often find quite boring. Best of the job, least engaging.
Yeah. So like if I think about that, like that means like I could have really stopped quite a few years ago and without having to buy any more new cameras, and I just save all the money and probably enough to buy me a car. If I think about that.
Yeah, that is the thing. And for a while I had an XT1, Fujifilm XT1, and an XT5 side by side. Yeah. And in all honesty, I was just as happy with the XT1 because it's simpler, a little bit lighter, obviously 16 megapixels, not 40. Yeah. But megapixels aren't everything. And I think that's an interesting comparison because you've got cameras 4 generations apart. Yeah. And you still like the old one. That's got to tell you something.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say I liked it more, but I liked it almost as much. Because it's less pretentious, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I mean,
it wasn't trying so hard.
No, if I'm a Fujifilm user, I would probably go with the X Pro 2. I mean, I always like the rangefinder style cameras, and I think the X Pro is pretty cool, pretty neat.
It is.
It has everything that I probably would never want. It doesn't need any more. It's not particularly fast shooting camera anyway. For that type of camera, I'm not going to mount any big heavy lenses on it. So
just try getting one at a reasonable price, though. It's quite hard at the moment.
That's why I don't even want to think about it at the moment.
So Mark is asking, do we think Lumix cameras are underrated? I think they are, rather. They're not all good. I mean, I've never liked the G100. It's just too small. But the bigger ones, I think the GH5, GH5 II, GH6 and 7, excellent cameras. G9 is good.
I think the problem of Lumix, they're great. They make great stuff. I mean, to be honest, I love the GX7. Really, I love the GX7 as a video camera. It's a very capable still camera as well. I mean, it has a 25 megapixel sensor, which I use a lot actually for stills as well, using the OM glass. And I think it's a lot to do with how Lumix was developed in the first place. It's very much a video-centric image to many consumers and for many creators. So when it comes to Panasonic Lumix, only those who were shooting with their camera for stills would know that they're still cameras. But most people will think they're video cameras. So even though when they have the GX5, GX6, GX7, it's still more or less the content creators shooting videos.
I think Panasonic correctly saw the future, but he's got a little bit ahead of the market. And I think they could have done a lot better if they'd pitched the cameras more at photographers than they did. I mean, things like the GX8. The GX8 was a nice camera. GX9 is quite nice as well. But they decided that wasn't the way they wanted to go. But
and what about the G9? The G9 was a stills cameras.
Yeah, it's very good. Had a couple of issues with the color, I felt, but it's a physical object. It couldn't be better. So I think Lumix cameras are underrated. I recently reviewed the G97. I know people will say quite rightly it's just a G90 reborn. But it's not very expensive.
No.
It gives very good images, excellent stabilization, and the Lumix G12 to 60 kit lens is much better than it should be at that price. So, you know, Panasonic cameras can be very, very good.
They are.
I think they just didn't, they gave up on them a bit too soon and didn't sell them in the way that they should have done.
I mean, what I would like to really see from Lumix, at least for the immediate short term, is a little bit more focused message to the consumers, to the end users, exactly what they want to do. I felt, you know, as a consumer, I mean, I use GX7 for videos, and I use OM stuff for stills in a Micro Four Third system. I just always feel, you know, OM systems, they are known for stills. They're focusing on stills, and everybody knows about it. They don't even care about video, even though they have video features in it, but they don't care about them. But Lumix is all over the place a little bit. I mean, the message is everywhere. You know, they got now both system, both full frame and Micro Four Third, and you know, the lens roadmap is all over the place, and then the camera product is kind of like a mixed message everywhere. They has S5, S5 II, S5X. It's very confusing. And which one is for what? Which one is this and which one is that? I think it's all over the place at the moment.
I think if you look at the Lumix S9, for example, as basically a box-shaped vlogging camera, that would have been much better in Micro Four Thirds. The camera would have been smaller. The stabilization would have been better. You'd have had a better choice of frame rates. It would have been better at that job than the S9 is. But Mark makes the point that the S5 is a very cheap full-frame camera. Everybody complained it didn't have phase detect autofocus. He felt it was fine for DFD. Exactly. It was fine for stills photography with the DFD. It was fast, precise, and accurate. It's only in video that it kind of fell down a bit. And that's only because every YouTuber on the planet for a while had nothing better to do than trash Panasonic's DFD autofocus. But for stills photography, never an issue.
Yeah,
but,
in some way, I think it's the actual influencers market who killed Panasonic. Because for a very long time, Panasonic was really happy about the DFD. In fact, they have perfected. When we talked about refinement, you know, Panasonic has refined a contrast detect system to the point that I think you can't get better than a contrast detect based AF system.
Well, I think Panasonic, if they could have done, they would have stuck with it. But it's just a tide of opinion went against them, and they had to do it. For all we know, it's still DFD, but they're just pretending.
But it's true. It's true. But I think that, you know, they are underrated. You know, in that sense, you know, in many ways. Are we the one to blame? You know, like, I don't know. Maybe to a certain extent. You know, maybe we have somehow killed Panasonic. The DFD because of that. You know, it's a fantastic system if you think about it.
I always stuck up for it, Jimmy. I always stuck up for it. But no, I think this is a big fault with the whole camera reviewing ecosystem now, that everyone looks for a weakness and amplifies it, and it distorts everyone's perception of cameras and their technologies. It's everyone's obsessed with flaws and weakness, and it's disappointing. And it did kill. I think it's hurt Panasonic a lot. But then you get a company like Sony that is quite free with its loan samples, and everybody loves them. Not saying that is a direct factor. Yeah. But for a while, every YouTuber had a Sony A7S III.
Yeah, I mean, Sony
except me, I never had one. Damn it!
Sony's definitely doing that right. You know, like, you know, for a lot of manufacturers, if you look at like Panasonic, like OM System and Nikon, they probably have a few pre-production samples, you know, to give out to journalists and press to test them. Sony would just basically, the first manufacturing batch is all going out to the influencers.
Yeah, for sure.
Like 10,000 of them just go out.
Yeah. And it is a bit disappointing, but it makes sense for the manufacturers. They've got a very simple equation. They which independent creator is going to give them the most airtime, the most videos, the longest, the most web posts, and you can have the camera, because that way they get maximum possible coverage.
They basically just trying to manufacture the algorithm to their benefits when they have basically given out so many. Yes.
Why wouldn't they?
But yeah, I mean, just go back to that Lumix S9 that you talked about, and I think if they would have done it in Micro Four Third, quite rightly so, it would have been a
much better
really
camera.
phenomenal thing, and much better than a full frame. You can even make it smaller, have an IBIS. It's going to be a cool camera.
All the quality that market would need.
Yeah.
MFT's got plenty of quality for video of that kind.
Yes.
You don't need a full frame camera for that, but again, it's the market leading it's the demand leading the market. We think MFT would have been better for that kind of camera, but everyone's in the full frame and they won't believe the full frame isn't the best thing ever.
No. Well, now every vlogger is using Pocket 3 is even a smaller, smaller sensor. So
I know,
there you go. There you go.
It's a very fickle thing. Demand is a very fickle thing. I know. Yes.
Yeah. So I guess we are going to wrap up today's conversation. It's been quite fun, and certainly good to see you guys back. So we got one more week before Rod is going away again.
Yeah.
And so next week we're going to have another new topic, and anything you would like to hear about, please leave a comment down below. And also I would like to hear from you about your thoughts about what we talked about today, and do you think we are really reaching the peak of everything that we have nowadays? We can't get better in terms of camera technologies. Even the camera is going to be releasing next year, and a year after it's going to be more or less the same as what we're having in 2025. And likewise, whatever we get today is probably similar to what we have 2-3 years ago. You don't need any more, any better, any newer. But what we do want is perhaps more lenses, right? And more lens choice, upgraded lenses that hasn't been upgraded for 10 years, 15 years.
Well, Mark's closing comment is about Sigma's contemporary I series lenses. He's quite right. They are wonderful lenses. So my suggestion to think about is maybe another topic. Forget cameras. Who makes the best lenses?
Oh, right. Okay, maybe next week then.
Or who makes the best lenses for you?
Yep.
Because it won't be the same for everyone. Forget about cameras. You can always get a camera.
Yeah.
You just need to think about your lenses.
Good. Right. Next week's topic is set. So we're going to talk about lenses next week. So let's stay tuned. Let's come back for a lens talk next week. But at the same time, you think about what is the best lens for you, and then we can talk about it next week. And for me, I already have a few selections already. So straight off my head, I already have a few that is cool.
Excellent.
I can also almost say that I have a few favorite lenses for each of the platforms at the moment. So
I'll just say in closing that I've often started with a camera and got into the wrong system. I've never got into the wrong system by starting with the lenses. I've often got a camera and then figured I can't find lenses that suit me.
Yeah.
But it's never happened the other way around.
That is very true, which I will talk about that next week, and because one particular lens has got me into a system. In fact, or almost like makes me want to buy more camera bodies to use less lens in that particular way, because that lens is so good that I think that I should be getting a better body for it.
A better camera to go with it. Come on, you get down, you get a silly dog.
So that will be an interesting conversation. I would like to hear about your favorite lens and why that lens is so special for you and the type of photography that you do as well. And that will be an interesting.
Sorry, just been attacked.
Yeah, we better let Rod off now, because otherwise, the dog is going to eat through every cable that he has.
Who's there? Oh, God.
All right, Dad. I'll see you all very, very soon.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wish me luck. Got a very excited dog here.
Good luck. Bye now.
Bye. No, you get down. Honestly. Embarrassing.